Hello there, my name is Brady and I'm a graphic designer. This is Daily Definitions. What exactly is Daily Definitions though? Is it a website? Is it some sort of poster? Or is it Instagram stories? It's kind of all of them. Let me explain. Michael Bierut's 100-Day Challenge, originally presented to Yale graduate graphic design students in the form of a workshop that he used to give, served as the initial inspiration for this project. The 100-Day Challenge is fairly self-explanatory. Students are to choose a creative task and then perform said task every day for 100 days, sequentially, documenting the progress of the task and its eventual completion. And the most famous example is Eli Kim's Boombox YouTube video, which is linked. Being the type of person I am, though, I needed to go further than that. I decided to come up with a project that guarantees a brand new poster being created every single day for not 100 days, but instead a full year, 365 days. Was this enough of a challenge, though? No, of course not. So I added 5 more rules that I'm going to really quickly go over now, and then the full rule as written will pop up. Rule 1. Every poster must depict one definition of a word while having a different definition typeset. Rule number 2. Only 5 colors can exist within the poster: black, white, red, green, and a yellow-orange. And only those specific swatches of those colors. Rule 3. There will be no transparency effects, blending modes, or other methods of creating additional colors or values outside of the 5 previously mentioned. Rule 4. Every poster can only have the following text: the word defined, the listed definition of that word, and the sentence listing the poster's chronological number. And the 5th and final rule: every single poster must be hand-drawn by myself in Adobe Illustrator without image tracing, AI generation, or artistic contribution from any other people. You may ask where all these rules came from. However, the answer is kind of a little bit disappointing. I would say it's just not particularly interesting. I decided pretty much all of the rules based on the poster I created for the first day, which was November 8th in 2024. I had no real rules in mind when working on the first poster, but after considering how many posters I'd be creating, I figured that some rules would probably help the collection kind of look more unified when it was presented in its entirety at the end. It's now November 7th, 2025, though. I've completed all of the posters, and I am here to share what I've learned in the past year. First off, I was correct about the designer I thought I wanted to be a year ago, which is confusing. I understand that. I'll break it down here. By that, I mean that in 2024, I wanted to be a designer that got all the details right. I enjoyed agonizing over tiny changes that most people would likely not even notice, and I loved the research process as much as the actual design process at times. In 2024, I wanted to be a graphic designer, but one specifically whose research-based tie-ins could not be separated from their work. And after 365 posters, I can confidently say that I was correct. My favorite part of this project was kind of just coming up with innovative twists to words, including references to media and cultural, like kind of touch points, and getting into the weeds on every single poster that I could. I found that to kind of be the healthiest way to complete a project of this nature. Just because having no days off from a project and balancing that with work and school can be a little draining, to say the least. And so as a result, some sacrifices were made overall. Consistency with shapes was never really a priority, nor was the level of minimalism versus maximalism that each poster struck. And while I'll admit that the collection could be a lot more unified had I considered these more, I finished the entire project with the majority of my sanity intact, which is honestly kind of good enough for me at this point. Daily Definitions was a truly great way, though, of exemplifying the human ability to create, in my opinion. Some of the posters weren't really fun and were genuinely very difficult to complete for me. Some of them I could not save through dense research or pop culture references or tying in media I like. You know, the posters vary in quality, and I think that's kind of all right, because sometimes you're going to have a really great idea and you're going to be passionate about it and you're going to execute it just exactly how you want to. And an example of that for me would be day 326, where I did opera, which was really cool because I used filigree to kind of create a frame.
Editor Brady here. So filigree is actually the incorrect word. Filigree is a wire technique. What I was actually thinking of was ornamentation. The reason I got them confused is because both were used in medieval Europe, specifically in the Middle Ages, with illuminated manuscripts.
For a fan of the opera style mask, all of which is kind of couched in a playbill dimensioned black space made by cutting off the left side of the poster using negative space. Posters like this one were so fun to work on that I was kind of willing to just go past the hour of time I initially set aside for the project each day. And I did that on kind of a lot of them. There were a lot of the posters that I really, really enjoyed kind of getting into the weeds on, and as such, I gave myself extra time. There's also the other side of the coin, though. You know, sometimes you're going to have a day where there isn't really an interesting take on the poster, or if there is, you're too exhausted to really search for it. So not every poster got a full hour. The TLDR is that humans are fallible. If you're seeking work that's completely unique, it's not necessarily going to be great every single time. And that's evidenced by there being so many posters that I feel like I could have greatly improved upon were I just given a second day to work on them. The nature of the project doesn't really afford that, though, so some of them are understandably dim in comparison to the luster that others achieved. Vocabulary, though, has gained brightness in bounds. It's easily the biggest personal improvement I've found over the course of this project. And not only lexical vocabulary, my grasp of visual vocabulary improved greatly over the past year. At the beginning of the project, I wasn't really pushing shapes enough. I was routinely kind of opting to translate images and ideas in the most linear way that I could. And there was reason, you know, I was doing it under the guise of making them recognizable. However, kind of one-to-one translations aren't fun, and while sometimes they are the most effective approach, they often kind of just leave you wanting for more. It's pretty much exactly the idea that Wolfgang Weingart was hitting upon when he said, "What's the use of being legible when nothing inspires you to take notice of it?" Day 207's poster Throw is probably the best evidence I can think of for this argument, just kind of overall. It would be really easy to identify my first draft as being a person throwing an object, and then kind of deduce that toss, throw, or fling were the word being depicted. But the first draft was a really Route 1 interpretation of the word throw, right? And so the next idea I had for the poster was a little more eccentric and was less accessible, but in my opinion was more interesting. And this was the idea of visualizing throw in the context of pottery, since to throw something in pottery means to form ceramic ware on a pottery wheel. And I know that because I had to take a pottery class, and it was wheel throwing. Visualizing this definition meant that I could reference the pottery scene from the 1990 movie Ghost as the main graphic of the poster. Which I'm going to say right now, I've never watched the movie Ghost, but I knew about the scene because of a bit on Community. They do the ghost scene. You're not allowed to do any ghosting.
I will tolerate no reenacting, whether it's ironic or sincere, of the Patrick Swayze Demi Moore pottery scene in Ghost.
Translating the actual scene from Ghost itself made for a lot more of an interesting poster already than someone just kind of throwing a ball. But by this point, it was day 236, remember. I had already kind of developed a graphic style that I felt worked well with the limited 5-color palette, which required adding more contrast than the scene originally had in it. And then additionally, I was using only straight lines to create more geometric forms than those that are present in kind of humans or pottery. All of this is to say I made a lot of decisions which obscured the poster's subject matter in layers of references and aesthetic choices, intentionally muddying because clay comes from the ground. I made decisions which obscured the poster's subject matter in layers of references and aesthetic choices, intentionally muddying the poster's readability. In spite of all this, it's a far more interesting poster than the original, and I don't think there's a lot of argument to be made otherwise. I thought that was a good joke. For the last section of the video, I'd kind of like to address a few questions that I was asked by several people about this project whilst completing it.
How did you come up with all the words?
So in order to come up with 365 homophonic words, I used two main resources. The first, unsurprisingly, being the internet, and its number of encyclopedias, thesauruses, and dictionaries. My pre-existing knowledge and vocabulary served me in this endeavor as well, since there are some words, specifically slang words, that aren't going to show up in dictionaries, right? The second, and often more interesting resource though, was people, actually. It turns out that asking people, what words can you think of that mean more than one thing, is a pretty solid conversation starter. Unfortunately though, most people can only kind of come up with the same dozen or so words. However, every once in a while there's kind of a diamond in the rough, and I would get another word to add to my list, be it from a person on the train or a coworker at a retail job. So yes, people on the internet. Those are my two sources on the words. All this is to say, while every ounce of design work was done by myself, this project would have been impossible without the contributions of all the people I spoke to. Regardless of race or religion, independent of intelligence or intention, all of these people that were strangers to one another came together to help make this project possible, which I think is pretty incredible.
Which poster is your favorite?
This question was always incredibly difficult to answer due to my creating a new contender in the race every single day. However, having completed all the posters now, I can confidently say that my favorite poster is Crane from day 4, which is surprising because it's so early, right? Despite being one of the first posters completed, I love it the best, and I'm not afraid to admit that. Creating shapes based on Crane's bodies was an interesting process, but made for a pretty dull poster. You know, it's kind of that Route 1 interpretation that I was talking about earlier. So I decided to superimpose them onto one another to generate new shapes made from the cranes, right? I eventually kind of landed on something that was evocative of a vertebral column, which connected to the other meaning of crane, which is to stretch out one's body or neck to see something. The solution that I came to was simple but elegant, and above all else, it looks fucking cool. So yeah, Crane's my favorite, looks cool, has lots of layers. Can't lose. Okay, I did forget about black, kind of on the idea of layers and also looking cool, because for black, I did a geometric portrait of the late Chadwick Boseman, which was based on a reference shot from Black Panther, which is a movie built completely from black culture, spanning American blackness and its connections and conflicts really with Pan-Africanism, all of which is directed by Ryan Coogler, who is a director that has imbued blackness into every movie he's made from Fruitvale Station to Sinners. So that one's got a lot of layers too, and honestly, it could be that one as well. I love a poster with a lot of layers. Honestly, it could be Trap. It could be Trap also. TF2 Scout, you know. I like that one a lot as well. Maybe it could even be Bill, because, you know, Daffy Duck. I'm quite fond of Zip, too, actually. Honestly, maybe it's...
How do you finish them all on time?
It's about being intentional and always setting time aside for the project, okay? Even when you're working 16 hours a day at 2 jobs, everybody can find an hour to draft a poster if they really want to. If you can't get something done every day, it could just be that you're lazy. You know, have you considered that? My advice to you would be just kind of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and not procrastinating anymore. You know, pretty simple, pretty easy advice. Because people like you are what's wrong with this country. I don't finish them all on time, believe it or not. In fact, many were not completed on their assigned days. Because, yeah, sometimes you, in fact, do have 2 8-hour shifts in one day and night due to working multiple jobs. And while I do think it's important to the spirit of the project to stay on schedule, I have a counterpoint. I'm so tired so often, is the thing, okay? Over the past year, I've completed a master's degree. I published a thesis paper. I wrote, produced, and edited 5 different video essays and applied to over 50 unique graphic design positions. All that time working part-time jobs to afford my rent, pay my student loan interest down, which is astronomical, by the way, and ensure that my own needs are met. So, yeah, like poster 342 wasn't completed on time, and about a dozen others over the course of the year were late as well. Not because I don't care, but because I kind of just simply couldn't make it happen every single day. And out of respect for the project, I refused to just throw together a poster in 15 minutes so that I could like say it was done on time and just kind of go to sleep. I wanted every poster to be of good quality. And in the final poster I did finish on the final day. Sometimes I just had to postpone them a day. And I think that's not the biggest deal. If that's a huge integrity issue to you, then sorry, I guess.
Would you recommend others do this too?
No. What? Why would you watch all of this and think I'd be answering yes, you absolute buffoon, you optimistic dunce, you absolute rose-tinted glasses-wearing babe swaddled in the belief of changing your circumstances through self-sacrifice and adversity? The amount of times that I've gotten this question is absolutely inane. I cannot stress enough that this is not a project that everyone, or honestly maybe anyone other than myself ever, should for any reason complete. Don't do it. I already did it. I'm telling you, I did it. Don't do it. Don't. Stop. No, don't do it. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. Stay back. Okay, so there were obviously a myriad of benefits to completing this project, and I'm not so cynical as to discount all of those. But the things that I learned through this project could easily have been garnered in a lot less time and with far less personal strife. For example, I guess by like the 150th poster, editor Brady here, the 144th poster jaw actually exemplified this style being completely mastered rather than the 150th. I'd kind of already developed the geometric, high contrast illustration method that I mentioned earlier when I was talking about throw, right? And that's less than halfway in. Was there a need to do over 150 more posters? I'd say maybe not. Maybe there wasn't. Within the first month, I was already kind of seeking out diverse and referential influences for the posters rather than taking literal approaches. Crane was day 4. Remember, I had already kind of gotten bored of the one-to-one within the first week. And by the end of the first month, I was doing it regularly. And I was already doing copious amounts of research for everything I created before the project was even beginning to be conceived. Okay, the lessons can be learned without doing a year's worth of posters, right? You don't need to do this many. You shouldn't do this many. I guess I think actually, if you're the type of person that thinks you absolutely cannot do the 100 days challenge, then I think you should give it a shot, which sounds counterintuitive. But it's because you very easily could surprise yourself and make it a week or more, right? And the confidence boost alone for kind of achieving that is worth taking the risk of confirmation bias. However, if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're kind of already a graduate student working on your thesis before tackling the job market, do not do this, right? Like that's sounds obvious, but like I did it. I knew going into this project that I would be willing to complete it by any means necessary, even if it meant missing sleep, meals, the birth of my firstborn heir, the Queen's coronation, etc., right? Like, there are so many reasons that only Oliver Richmond does stuff like this. And in case you're not recognizing that name, Oliver Richmond, by the way, has been writing a brand new song every single day for over 2 years now. But I digress, okay? It's undoubtedly important to learn new things daily, right? There are so many kind of cognitive studies that prove this fact, and they're all going to be on the screen right now. Unfortunately, though, the majority of people are content to learn nothing often because we're kind of careening towards a global society of anti-intellectualism, right? And kind of in light of all this, there's of course value in challenging oneself to learn every day for an extended period of time. Whether that learning is pertinent to a trade, is incredibly specific, or is completely random, though, changes a lot about what you're going to get out of it. If your goal is to simply just learn a new word every day, you're in luck. That's a great goal, because there are hundreds of thousands to choose from, many of which are going to be new to you and as such will be interesting. If that word needs to be a homophone, which is a word that has two meanings that are different, there's going to be less options, right? But there still remains plenty of discovery to undergo. If you need to be able to depict the definitions of all of the homophones that you choose as well, then your list is going to shrink, right? Along kind of with the potential for interesting learning opportunities. And let's just say randomly, hypothetical, you've also decided to only depict those definitions in 5 colors and choose to do so for a full year without any breaks, and you decide to do all of it yourself. Congrats, you've arrived at this project, right? And you've made so many rules that your learning opportunities are few and far between now, right? Do you get what I'm saying here? Rules and regulations are important to creativity, often kind of being powerful catalysts for innovation, right? Innovating every single day for an entire year with unchanging rules, though, is pretty tough, right? Would I recommend others attempt this project too? Yes, actually. I would recommend others attempt this project, so long as your intention is doing so is to learn and that you aim to give yourself grace in that learning process. You can learn every day, and you can create every day. They are not mutually exclusive, right? Learning enriches oneself, and creating enriches the world. And as the only person to kind of ever complete daily definitions, I've found it's entirely all right to only do one at a time. You should only do one at a time. If your goal is to enrich the world through creativity, start with yourself. Learn things and grow, and then teach it to others through what you create. If you want to enrich yourself, the easiest way to do that is taking in others' creations, specifically without trying to make something out of the experience. The ability to separate the processes, to separate learning and creating, is what creates incredible art and leads to scientific breakthroughs and leads to the creation of new inventions, right? Learn, grow, and create, sure, but be all right doing one at a time. One at a time, so okay. Please just do one thing. I'm begging you, just do one thing. I did too many things for a whole year. Just do one thing, and not for a whole year. Just do one thing every once in a while. Just do that. How about that? Just do that, please.